it's nice to have some actual Australian voices on the show. It's been Nasher in the seat for the last couple, so he's yet to.
We're claiming him. He's ours now.
Okay,
but you know, there is the Manx Australian crossover, which is a little more niche.
I feel like I'm in long-term listener, first-time caller territory here with you guys today. So thanks for having us. It's nice to be in studio as well.
Yeah, we should call it a debut, I think.
Debut. Always a debut. Looking forward to a couple of them during the summer.
And obviously we've got Miller representing Hackney and Dorset as well.
Damn right.
It's good to have you in, although you are, of course, on the wrong side of the globe for the upcoming festivities. Adam, you're based here. Geoff, not quite doing an Adam Zampa, I don't think, flying halfway across the world and back. But there's a very good reason for you to be here today, and it's perched on the desk between us.
Yes.
That's right. This is the book that we've put out based on the history show. So we have our podcast, and then there's a spin-off version called Storytime. So we picked up, we've got 22, why not have it a cricket-related number, 22 of the best stories, our favourite stories that we've told on Storytime, which is a show where we do random deep dives into some of the strange stories you can find in cricket history, which has, as it turns out, an infinite number of them. The more you dig, the more you find. And so we've put 22 of those together. There'll be a couple that people might be familiar with and quite a few that they won't be familiar with, I'm confident.
Yeah, it's kind of I've always thought of this since we started the project earlier this year as it's the perfect Christmas gift on a couple of fronts. It's the one you buy your uncle. You're looking for the gift for the uncle, this is it. If you've got an enthusiastic youngster who's coming into the game, this is it. Or for people who are, whether they're well-versed in the history of the game or otherwise, I think these stories are rogue enough. And that's been partly due to our outstanding audience on The Final Word who have provided us with the numbers and thus the opportunity to walk through these doors and tell these stories.
Yeah, they give us clues and then we go and find a story related to the clues. So that's how it's ended up. So it's called Bedtime Tales for Cricket Tragics, and it's a pretty light read. They're short-ish stories. Some are a bit longer than others, but the kind of things that you can breeze through and then have some good factoids to go and throw around next time you catch up with some like-minded friends. Did you know that this happened? Did you know the West Indies toured Papua New Guinea in 1975? And they will say no, and you will get nerd points.
Well, that brings me to the Storytime evolved out of the Nerd Pledge, which feels sort of very Crick Info areas. Yeah. And I think the first mention for Crick Info is on page 9. So
that sounds about right. I mean, this was partly a pandemic piece as well. We had already started doing this where people have kindly been, through our Patreon, our crowdfunder, been sending in like bespoke cricket numbers. It started with 222. 2 for 22, a homage to Richie Benaud. And it just evolved so quickly from there where Geoff and I were blessed with these numbers coming through, these pledges coming through. And one thing very quickly led to another. And when the pandemic struck, and we were kind of wanting for interesting, fun, good things to talk about because there was just no
to
cricket.
take our minds off things as well. And so there was this sense that there's all of this, there are these open fields of cricket history and you can go and spend some time there and not think about the present. And it's not like the past was full of wonderful times. There are plenty of dark times in cricket stories as well, but it allowed us to take our minds somewhere else. So the audience will send in a number. This is how it works. And then the number is something. It's a stat. It's part of a story. So you go, the original one was 222. What does that mean? Oh, it's a Richie Benaud joke. It's 2 for 22. And then you go on from there. And so we ended up with, we obviously use Stats Guru a lot to crunch a lot of the numbers for this, but the nomination, the first mention that you brought up then is one of my favourites because it's the nomination for the worst ever Crick Info profile. And I think it's a competitive field, but we might have the winner. I think people will have to read into it to find out who it might be.
I won't provide any spoilers there. I was wondering, actually, there were some great tales in there. Arthur Conyngham, particularly Connie, versus the Catholic Church. AE Stoddart Party Liaison, the nod to Van Wilder.
Yep.
How do you research a guy like Charlie Absalom, though?
Some of these are niche.
I don't think he's on Stats Group.
No, should be for a volume of wickets.
Well, so he played a lot of lower level cricket, and he was famous in that he played not professional, he played high standard cricket up into his 80s. And we've only got the stats for him from about the age of 50 onwards, but he played for 40 years before that as well. He started in his mid-teens. And from about his mid-50s to his 80s, he took something like 8,000 wickets in this period of time. He took 59 hat-tricks in his career, and he was bowling underarm lobs. And so we've certainly lent on a lot of other people's research, and that's some of those historians I mentioned in the back of the book. But, you've got to go and find the first thread and then start pulling it and then see what else you can find, where you can find old newspaper archives that might give you some more context, where you can find other research that's been done previously, where you can get into databases, births, deaths and marriages, military service databases, things like that. And a lot of this stuff exists digitally now and a lot doesn't. But once you've found the thread and you've started pulling on it, you just want to keep going.
And when it comes to Absalon, Miller and I both turned to bowling spin later in life. It's reasonable to say, Andrew.
Very much so. In fact, I was just thinking, he sounds like the total role model for you, given the season you've just had.
And you and your
I've got a little
breaks.
way to catch up with your 100 wickets in 50 odd games.
But the point stands is that I think you and I are the types who've reached a certain age where we want to play every game we can. And I admire the idea of guys playing into their 80s. And
but he sometimes plays 3 games in a day. Yeah, so you've got a bit of work to do to catch up with.
We did do 2 in a day. We did a cricket writers game in the afternoon, which Miller and I played in, and I dashed across town to play. And you did as well.
I did the same. I played for the Camel in the evening.
Yeah, so there is a way. Where there's a will, there's a way when you're a desperado like us.
Yeah, mostly arranging awkward start time for everyone else.
Quite.
Do either of you have a favourite bedtime tale, or perhaps a sort of a most opposite Ashes one, given where we are in the calendar?
My favourite story is Andrew Stoddart's 485. I feel a kinship with him in many respects. The short story is that he made the world record score of 485, which was the score in any game of cricket to that point in 1880 when he scored it, after being out literally all night on the tear, playing cards, carousing, dancing and so on, having barely any kip, allegedly maybe some kip in the dressing room, a bite to eat, batted for 6 hours, broke the world record, finished up, did it all again, was partying till 3 o'clock the next day. So, and that was a week which included his maiden first class 100, another double 100 for Hampstead there at Lamington Road, that beautiful ground in West Hampstead. And we know that, as the story goes on to tell, he became an Ashes winning captain in 1894-95, and I would argue the best Ashes series ever, alongside 2005. Certainly the best Ashes series in Australia, the 2-0 to 2-all, and the way that England from following on won that Test of Sydney by 10 runs, and Stoddart making 173 at Melbourne as skipper. And he was a very gifted athlete. By all reports, a very interesting human being, had a complicated life, but boy, 2 nights on the tear with 485 in the middle of it, we should all be as lucky to do something like that.
And my favourite by far, and there is an Ashes link, is a guy called Laurie Nash, who played in the 20s and 30s. He was a footballer. He was rough as they come. He annoyed everybody. He cut the sleeves off his shirts. He was Catholic and married a Protestant. He wouldn't be told what to do. And there's a game where he's playing for Tasmania against the touring South Africans. He cleans up one. He cleans up another next ball. Oh, you're on a hat-trick, Laurie. Pitch it up, hit the stumps. No, bouncer, hits the guy in the head. He's like, I don't care about hat-tricks. I'm here to hurt people. And they didn't pick him in Bodyline the following year because they were scared that it would make it worse. Like, they thought the international incident would become even more extreme if Laurie Nash got picked.
Very vague echoes of one of my favourite tales, Darren Gough, in the original T20 game. Do you remember that in 2005? He had the opportunity to get a hat-trick in that. And I think it was Andrew Simons was up against him. He bowled a bouncer to him. And bear in mind, this is Darren Gough on his last legs. He was like puffing Billy. He was basically should not have been playing. He should have been retired several years earlier. But this was his one chance to land one on the Aussies. But
Laurie Nash did get one chance to land one on the English, but it wasn't until 1937 when the score was 2-all coming into the 5th Test, and they hadn't picked him when Bill Woodfield was captain, but Don Bradman was captain at this point, and he said, I want Laurie Nash. We need to win this one. We've won 2 in a row. We're all square. Laurie Nash, and he prevailed upon the selectors, and they picked him, and Laurie Nash cleaned up. So he's got a wonderful story.
I always like to see or to hear a mention of Bobby Peel as well. Oh, yeah. You mentioned 1894.
Unjustly
the
pilloried.
Unholy trinity of watering incidents.
But unjustly slandered in cricket history for this rumour that he decided to take a leak by the side of the pitch because he was too drunk during a game. He may have been drunk during the game. We're open to that possibility. He said he wasn't drunk. He'd only had the regulation 2 gins with water at breakfast. That was just a regular way to get started. But it was a transcription error that suggested that he'd done that.
Clearly, every bit as traduced as the England squad in the Oval in 2013.
Well, look, at least that game had finished rather than being halfway through the second session.
I'm trying to wonder what Miller's nerd pledge would be something to do with Angus Fraser, probably.
Well, funnily enough,
Would it be the speed that Angus Fraser was doing when he got pulled over in New Zealand and lost his licence?
Angus Fraser would be definitely 5 for 28 would be good, but I'm a cheapskate, so I'd go £2.36. I'll leave that with you.
Won't be his cap number.
No, it's not Angus Fraser.
Far beyond that. Sorry.
So £2.36. So 2.36
Well, if we're still,
is my number.
okay,
I'll leave that with you.
Can think
I'll
about
think it through. Usually the numbers in the 230s and 240s are excellent because they're interwar England cricket cap numbers. And that is, as we've learnt through this project over 5 or 6 years, there is nothing looser than a story about an England cricketer in the interwar period. The number of one-cap wonders or players that were picked from obscurity. The beaut that's Father Charles Marriott, for instance, which got us down that path at the time. But that would, there'll be a player of about that ilk around that time. And they probably played twice with a batting average of 12 and was dragged up to the national team for no obvious reason.
Yeah, there's some son of a landed gentry who made a few against Malta, and suddenly they're captaining the Test team.
Maharaja of Viziana.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Court Lord Hawk's-Eye. What's the clue you've been most stumped by in this 5 years of doing this?
We had one that went for 7 consecutive episodes once because I kept coming up with new guesses and then getting it wrong. Was it 556?
Yeah, it was the 556, 557, the slowest Test.
57. Madassa Nazar took 557
Nazar,
balls to make the slowest Test 100, and I managed to pay tribute to that by having the slowest solution to a nerd pledge. I kept coming up with good answers, they just weren't it.
Yeah, I like the ones that will drag us to something that's got nothing to do with cricket. I'm doing one today. It's Remembrance Day when we're recording, and thus 50 years from when the Whitlam government was sacked by the Governor-General happened today. But there was a Shield game taking place as Whitlam was being sacked. So I'm doing that today when Geoff and I record the 246th edition of Storytime, which gives some sense of its longevity.
246, Geoff boycott the score that he got dropped after making. There you go.
There you go. Bang.
How many of these numbers can you just do that off the top of your head for?
A lot at the beginning, because initially they used to be pretty simple solves. You'd get a number would come in, it'd be $3.37. You go, that's Hanif Mohammed, and off you go. And because it didn't used to be, well, now I need to spend 4 days researching the life and times of Hanif Mohammed so I can do a 46-minute answer. It used to be a 2-minute answer, and now things have evolved. But yeah, I think we've used up a lot of the easy ones. Or if we get one that seems to have an easy answer now, we have to go past that because we've already done that story. So we need to go and find something else more obscure. And that's how you get to who else made 337 in a first-class game? Pervez Akhtar. Who did he do that for? Railways against Dera Ismail Khan, the biggest defeat ever in first-class history. Then you find that story, and that's way more exciting than Hanif Mohammed, which is also a great story.
And that's been one of our stage show staples over the years, telling the tale of Dera Ismail Khan, and I can only recommend when you're getting into the book, because you will go in a deep dive as well. It has been written about in the past. Shilberry has written about it. John Houghton has written about it, but I don't think they were given the freedom that we've had to tell. I think I did a 45-minute answer on it originally, and we're lucky to stumble upon these, and they end up being, they become strong parts of what Geoff and I do on stage, but also in the podcast. Interesting, and you're in the podcast business as well. You would expect that, like when a test match ends in dramatic circumstances, and Geoff and I are doing a daily show, a 20-minute ep, like the Melbourne Test match this year. They do great numbers, and we're really proud of those episodes. But Storytime, when Geoff and I are on these long discursive discussions
about 1897,
they do just
the
as well.
smokers versus non-smokers.
They do just
match
as well. Our audience and the people who find the final word enjoy that just as much as they do kind of the instant react when he and I are standing on the field of play within 20 minutes of the final ball. There is, I think it's a lovely thing about cricket that you can find your place in the game, and a lot of people, we think anyway, have found their place with us via this particular show.
And also, we're not being historians really, so we've got more latitude. We can make up something. We can say, I reckon this person said this. I think at this time they would have thought this, and we can put words in people's mouths, and it doesn't have to be completely accurately sourced. So we're not quite as constrained as those putting it into books, even though this is now a book.
Disclaimer for the book.
Yeah. Well,
don't believe everything you read. It's true, at least on a vibes basis.
And in the Bazball era, that's all we need. You don't really want the easy ones then, do you? You want the ones that can be spun out into a podcast, and then maybe a second volume of the book.
We were joking about this in the launch last night. Daniel Norcross, our dear friend and TMS colleague, who is probably the third most regular host on Storytime after Geoff and I, and Bharat Sundaresan, another But Daniel's like, well, this will just be an annual book now, won't it? And we're like, good
The
point.
shortlist was
good point.
Shortlist was 140. We had 140 stories on the shortlist, and we got it down to 22. So yes, there is scope.
Yeah, we could do this for a few Christmases, and we can come back and tell some more stories to you next year if you wish.
Some tough selection meetings there.
Yeah. It genuinely was. Like there were some real barneys about like what to leave out and what had to be there for book one. But here we are. And the nice bit is that the people who send in the number, the initial bit, they get their credit as well. You know, they're the catalyst. So their chapters have their
at
names
least
on them.
22 guaranteed purchases.
Guaranteed sales. Yep. Yeah. And plus a couple of copies for their friends and family. So I reckon we're selling 44, maybe 66.
Okay, that is Bedtime Tales for Cricket Tragics. Although listeners over here might have to put the cosy bedtime reading on hold for a few weeks. Miller, all of England's players have run the gauntlet at Perth arrivals now. And while the West Australian newspaper has been working itself into a tiz, you imagine that Ben Stokes and co will be tackling the build-up in their usual relaxed manner.
Well, indeed, it sounds like Ben Stokes' response to the cocky captain complainer headline was about 8 emojis, laughing emojis to Joss Buttler by all accounts. So I think they're pretty chill. They're certainly not. They're not a team that gets too stressed by build-up. And obviously the chat at the moment is about their lack of warm-up games, part of me does look across to Australia's preparations and the endless screeds of scores coming out from the Sheffield Shield and wondering whether, maybe they could have done with a decent workout or two. But, everything that England have put into this series is all about the vibes, isn't it? All about up top. It's all about the mental preparation, visualization, and giving it your best shot and all the rest of it. I mean, this is what they've been building up to for 4 years. Let's face it. Everything about this series harks directly back to the dismal COVID series, and Stuart Broad quite right saying it should be voided. I mean, England will come into this series with absolutely no baggage from that. I mean, Ben Duckett's pretty much said the same. There's lots of new faces, a completely new attitude. They are coming into Australia to do everything differently to what they did last time around, and that has got to be a good starting point for their campaign, because if they do the same thing that they did in the last 3 tours, they get spanked again. And I'm pretty confident they won't get spanked this time. They might lose, but I don't think they're going to get spanked.
I don't think anybody in Australia is paying much attention to what the Western Australian tabloids are writing either. They have a certain purpose to fill that only they can justify. But I don't know that it's reflective of a national mood. It's the people from outside cricket who come in to have their little moment and have a bit of a frolic around. But I do think there's a point to be made about not preparing for a series that they've talked about for 4 years. They've done nothing but, everything has been a benchmark for this. Every 5-test series against India has been, how are we building up to play against Australia? And then they're still rolling in a few days beforehand, not bothering to actually have warm-ups. If you were really serious about this, wouldn't you have been out there for a month already? Wouldn't you be...
Well, it's very much the McCullum-Stokes way, isn't it? That they've gone to Pakistan, New Zealand, I think India. They've won the first test in all those tours doing this. Yep. So they're... that will do that again.
They won the first test on those tours. How did it go after that on those tours?
Well, the India one, not quite so well.
Right.
And look, every team does this around the world now. There's no such thing as tour games. I wish there were. I mean, they're playing each other at Lilac Hill, which will be a lovely frolic. They'll probably hit some nice drives and whatnot. That's what they're really there for in the lead up. And they've probably done the same thing in New Zealand. However, when it all starts, the question is, it's more philosophical. Do you agree with the Andrew Strauss approach of 10-11 of playing a month of cricket, which, by the way, they did in 17-18? Below the radar. They played quite a bit of cricket in Australia in the November of 2017 before that Brisbane Test match. Or do they go with, as you say, Miller, the approach where they feel happiest when they start and they try and conserve some energy? There's no strident one way's right, one way's wrong. However, they'll be judged by it at the end one way or the other.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes the first test is always important. England don't have a good record of starting Ashes well from the first ball in Australia.
Yeah. Well, that goes back a long way to Stan Worthington, if you wish. But I would, by the way, a test that England won, wasn't it, in 36, 37 at the start. But no, I reckon that the first test chat, and it's worthy, my instinct is that if Australia weren't to win at Perth, that is not the end of the world for them, because they bring back Cummins in all probability for Brisbane. And even more importantly, I'm sure we'll talk about the ageing Aussie squad with all bar one player having a 3 in front of their age. They have been in situations where they have been on the back foot at the start of series as recently as losing by 300 runs at Perth to India in the first test last year. They know what it's like. They know what the abuse is like. We talk about the West Australian turning on the England team upon arrival. It'll be exactly the same the other way if Australia drop the first set, so to speak. And they found a way to win that Border Gavaskar, to win that Men's World Cup, having lost to India and South Africa to start a few years ago. So miles on the clock, true, but it also brings muscle memory. So my point here is that it is crucial that England win that first test. I'm not entirely sure it's crucial that Australia win it, if that makes sense. If England don't win it and they're 1-0 down, I think the energy, it can get big on a team. It can get big on a team really quickly being in Australia. We see it. Geoff and I have covered series in Australia for the last decade. I've been watching them for 30 years, you guys as well. If a team goes 1-0 down, they find it desperately difficult to get back into the series.
Yeah, well, what is it? Four Ashes series in Australia that I've covered, and England haven't won a test among them. But there've been 2 5-0s and 2 4-0s.
Yeah, but I think that it's like the psychology of Perth with England having this prized opportunity absent Cummins. If they can seize it, again, I don't think it'll destroy Australia, but they're in the scrap. They've done what they need to do. They've rocked up and achieved right away. If they go 1-0 down going to Brisbane, Australia have lost one pink ball test match ever. England have played not many of them. That will be, and Brisbane, I know that Australia have lost a couple of test matches there recently, but a surface that tends to suit Australian style of cricket. And we know what happens if you 2-0 down.
It's unusual, though, isn't it? Just the mentality of the chat is different. I mean, it's a long way removed from Glenn McGrath saying it's going to be 5-0. Even to countenance the idea that England could actually start the series strongly and win that first test is a complete transformation from anything we've been talking about in going into Ashes series for the past 15 years.
It's the fact that they've got actual fast bowlers available, because in those previous series, every time 21, 22, 17, 18, it was always leading into this, like say 6 months out, it would be, what if England can get all of their fast bowlers together? What if Ollie Stone is there? What if Mark Wood's there? What if Geoff Archer's there, and so on? And they just weren't. They weren't available until that series when Wood was actually able to play a few test matches last time around. This time, nobody's fallen over injured yet. There's still time. It may yet happen. Some kind of terrible billiards accident or something that goes really wrong in the hotel. But, golf driving simulator accident. If that doesn't happen, England could roll out 4 proper quicks in Perth, and it is bouncy. It's not the whacker cliche that you're used to, but there is lift in that pitch usually, sometimes. I mean, that West Indies test a few years ago was pretty flat when Australia played West Indies there. But if they've got that life in it, and if they can use it, and it doesn't have to be come out and bowl at everyone's head the whole time, but if you can just use that extra lift in the pitch to threaten the shoulder of the bat and try to feed the cord and that sort of thing, okay, it could happen. We saw what Mark Wood did against Australia at Headingley. That kind of spell, that kind of effort, that's the kind of thing that could blow Australia away. And if that happens, that's when our series is set up to be absolutely fascinating. That's when even more attention will come to it, if that can happen. But it kind of has to happen there.
Yeah, just so as not to disappoint all of our English listeners completely, I think if it's 1-1 after 2, then we've got something to work with. But ideally, England are going to be competitive in the first game. And Miller, Mark Wood is obviously going to be a big part of that. He hasn't played a game since the Champions Trophy. He's been talking a little bit out in Australia. And England's plan pretty much revolves around loading him and Geoff Archer into the breach and firing them directly at 38-year-old Usman Khawaja and whoever he opens with, and then battle is met.
Well, this is exactly what they did wrong last time around. I mean, obviously they did everything wrong last time around, but they completely bottled it that first test. They held back their big gun. I mean, why would you do that? Broad, Anderson, Wood. It was like, I can't remember. They played Wokes, they played Craig Overton, didn't they? It was
Wokes, Wood and Robinson.
Robinson, that's right. Yeah. They've got to front load this series. They've got to front load it, because it would be a dereliction of their duty to building, as we say, building for 4 years towards this. And Mark Woods, the fact he hasn't bowled is potentially a worry, but we've seen this with him before. We know how he operates. He doesn't need loads. He just needs to have confidence in his body to break it again. Basically, he will fling himself to the nth degree throughout the series. He will probably break himself by the end of the series. He may never play again, but I don't think he will care. This is basically what he's been building towards. He was the one man who emerged with any sort of credit from the last series. For I think he played 4 in a row, didn't he? And that was a a tribute to his guts and his stamina and his ability to bowl through the pain of rapid bowling.
Especially in that Hobart Test match when they were just cooked. And by the way, understandably cooked. That was a brutal. I mean, I know there'll be Australians listening to this and think I'm making excuses. I'm not. For England players, they were subjected to intense, ridiculous levels of control in that series, and it did have an effect on them, unquestionably, based on the accounts from the players. And the fact that Wood was still charging in at the end of the series, and he picked up a 6 for, I think, at Belrive, Geoff.
He did. Yeah.
That's to his credit, and I think they can really back him in. I sincerely hope they go to Perth and say plan A is doing as you described, Al, and trying to knock him out and have a crack at that with all 4 quicks. I as much as it pains me to say don't play Gus Atkinson because Atkinson is class, I would go, right, okay, Tongue, Cuss, you're the blokes that get it up them. You're going to complement Wood and Archer. Shower Bashir, you can put the vest on. And Gus Atkinson can cool his jets for Brisbane in a day-night test match in conditions that should suit him. Maybe Matty Potts as well. And they give themselves a week of trying to blitz Australia. And if it works on a pitch that is the bounciest in Oz, the pitch at the casino remains the... I know Perth isn't the whacker anymore, but interestingly, the component parts or whatever it is at the drop-in there at Perth Stadium does behave similarly to the old-fashioned whacker.
It's almost more whacker than the whacker.
More whacker than the whacker, because the whacker died.
It kind of died off, and then they went and got the same soil, and they used that for the drop-ins, and it does have life in it.
Yeah, so if that's your plan, and Geoff, you're right too in saying that this has been the plan before, which they've not been able to implement. But if it is the plan this time, plan A, go for it.
Well,
no half measures.
You don't know how long you'll have that chance for.
Exactly, they're not going to get it.
You can go in and play conventionally at Perth in week 1, and it probably won't work. So why not be unconventional?
It's the only pitch in the country right now which should behave like that. And the other 4, interestingly, will be well suited to, dare I say it, James Anderson, Chris Wokes, of course, neither of whom are available. But that's a different story altogether.
One of them's available. Jimmy would play if they called him.
True. I think I can easily see a world where Sam Cook's on a plane at some point. He's not in the Lions squad, weirdly. And I can also imagine a world where Ollie Robb ends up playing. I don't think that is outside the realms of possibility. I know
he is at least on hand bowling.
I know this particular group. He did that interview with Will Mack in the Telegraph during the week about how he feels like he's well removed from it at the moment. But if there were to be a spate of injuries and they wanted a bowler who was well suited to the conditions, then that would constitute Robinson. But that's a different question.
If you look at the way Scott Boland nibbled it on the SCG wicket last time around when playing India and picking up 10 for, that is the kind of... Well, now, I mean, look, I would say, right now, if you say Ollie Robinson's playing the 5th Test at Sydney, that probably means it's 4-0 down and things aren't going well. But there could be another world where they burn through all of their quicks and the series is still in play. And maybe he would be the kind of bowler, even if he is going at 74 miles an hour, he might be able to move it around.
Well, the wobble seam thing, there'd be a good historical reference. I mean, it's like when they brought Wilfred Rhodes back out of retirement to win the Ashes in 26. The same thing could be Ollie Robinson at the start of 26, 100 years later, from the
luckily
the
Wilfred Rhodes didn't have any controversial tweets. It's just a short pamphlet series that he penned.
The many and varied differences between Wilfred Rhodes and Ollie Robinson.
Wilfred
Rhodes didn't have a podcast either, did he? So.
Simon Wilde's writing that book right
now. The other sort of England selection call, which we might get a view on, we probably will this week, Miller, for that Lions game, is whether Ollie Pope, the incumbent at number 3, is going to stay the incumbent.
Sounds like he will. Sounds like Marcus Trescothick has dropped a fairly subtle hint that he will. But I mean, I think it was a given. I think Jacob Bethell, in theory, had his chance playing in those ODIs that we don't talk about anymore. But realistically, I think we discussed this a few weeks ago. I think it would be an odd decision, odd change for England to make at this precise moment, given everything we know about their willingness to back their players and their just making sure everyone's settled in their own mind about what their roles are. You can speculate all you like about his long-term place, and obviously losing the vice-captaincy does open up the possibility of making a change further down the line. But I think given everything we know about England just trusting their players to do their best and perform their roles, he still averages 39 as a number 3 in the Bazball era. So it's not as if he's been a complete turkey, and he started most of the series pretty damn well. I mean, obviously that Hyderabad century is a classic example of him coming out the blocks and producing something miraculous. So, I think he starts at 3, and England will give him more rope than less.
I think they'd want to make it very clear to him that that's the case, though, because with this, the Jacob Bethell situation is mystifying to me as an onlooker. But what they've done is managed to set it up so that they couldn't possibly have undermined Ollie Pope's confidence more than they've done in the last few months, being removed from the vice-captaincy as well for Brooke, Bethell floating around constantly like a little menace over his shoulder the entire time. And how could Pope go into this series with any confidence that if he makes a couple of low scores in Perth, he'll suddenly be jumpy as all hell, 4 bad innings, and that it would feel like that'd be it, rather than I'm here to play the series and I'll get some latitude to try to build my way into it. I think that the England camp have handled that really badly in terms of the lack of surety that he's had from the Zimbabwe Test onwards. So there was speculation about whether he would even play in that test.
Although Stokes is very public about saying, in fact, concocted a kind of media plot to undermine Pope around that Zimbabwe
to
test,
make him make runs
based on his own
to overcome his misspeaking.
His own 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
But then afterwards, when everyone interpreted that as okay, Bethell's going to come back in, he
got very annoyed about that. How dare you interpret the words that I said in the way that they would most likely be interpreted?
I feel like Pope and Khawaja are in a similar spot. In that, I reckon if they don't make runs in the first 2 Test matches, they will be under the pump. There will be no reprieve. I think they're both at that point. Not that they're at the same stage of their career. Pope's got far more latitude into the future. Is the vice captain as recently as 5 minutes ago. But as they start this series with Bethell looming for Pope, and Geoff's right about the vice captaincy and the words used around Brooke being a more suitable leader when Pope's literally the most recent England Test captain. Easy to forget that Stokes didn't play at the Oval the last time they turned out in 11. So that's of interest to me. And the only thing that concerns me about Pope is his modes, without getting too technical, but his modes of dismissal. I'd watch him bat week in, week out, covering Surrey in the Championship, and he does get caught in the cordon, steering balls there a lot. And that is the type of thing that Josh Hazlewood sits up and dreams. Josh Hazlewood
in Australia.
Yeah, Hazlewood dims the lights and gets the baby oil out when he sees stuff like that. You know what I mean? That is Hazlewood's dream come true, bowling at someone who gets caught off the high part of the blade at second slip steering. That is Hazlewood 101. So that's one to watch for an early matchup for me. When Pope first walks in, the stoush with Hazlewood. If he can show the discipline he needs on livelier Australian tracks, and good luck to him. If he can't, then I can see a world where Bethell features from the middle of the series onwards.
And you've seen a lot of players come to Australia and get in a lot of trouble trying to play that way because of that extra bounce. Yep. You see, particularly subcontinental players trying to play that steer. If that's your scoring shot, that's your get out. Well, you want to be as good as Joe Root is at playing that shot,
which is going to be interesting for Root as well, right? Because Root in Australia has gotten out that way an unbelievable number of times.
But he's also put it away at times because he's realised he's had to. So it's been a sort of mental battle for Joe Root over the years.
But Root's got no vulnerability coming into the series. He's untouchable, whereas Pope isn't. So that's where psychologically...
it is weird though, isn't it? Just the extent to which England had to sort of prise open the bubble. I think after the India loss, after the failure to close out the Ashes, even 23, the fact that their stats started to catch up on them and who've you actually beaten in Bazball, they were kind of obliged to lift the lid on the bubble. All the high on their own supply element of the first iteration of Bazball was completely self-fulfilling because the players completely believed they were invincible. Even if the results didn't necessarily say it, you could. I still argue that if they hadn't blown it by declaring or taking on the bouncer at Lords in 23, they'd probably won 5-0 that series. If they got on a roll early, that team, with the mindset that team had, that we are invincible and we're going to smash these Aussies,
they would have
taken all the way.
Still would have rained in Manchester.
Well, maybe, yeah. Well, they'd have wrapped it up.
They weren't
going
to change the weather. All the things that Ben Stokes' inspirational leadership can do, it doesn't change the cumulus.
But the point is, they had to acknowledge that something had gone awry with the mindset that was so invincible first time round, and I think Ollie Pope is the sort of collateral of that. They had to acknowledge a bit of vulnerability. Had to stop saying stupid things. They had to own a little bit of the lack of results that they produced through what I still maintain is actually a very sensible approach to trust your mental game.
Sure.
We all play at a very low level. And I know that I play best when I don't think about anything. And encouraging players at an elite level So don't think about the consequences. I can completely see the logic.
To a point.
Go into the series with absolutely no fear of reprisals, no fear of your place, no fear of anything. I can see the logic.
You've still got to have some intelligence about how you go about things. And I think this is my fundamental objection to some part of the approach is that being all out on winning, great, good. And this is going to sound like a very basic thing to say. They don't seem to understand that a loss is the opposite of a win in terms of a series scoreline. When you lose a game in a stupid fashion, you have surrendered the win. So you can have the miracle win, you can make the 800 against Pakistan and all the rest of it, and it can be amazing. And if you lose a game in a more pedestrian way, you've cancelled out that win. You've cost yourself that win. And I come back, I can't get this thing out of my head time and time again. Jamie Smith, with maybe a session to go and the possibility of batting for a draw, not getting out trying to hook a six, getting out trying to hook the fourth consecutive six in the over. Losing that test match when maybe it could have been saved, and losing that test match costs them the win that they had in the previous match. It wipes out that win. And I keep coming back to that. There's not thinking too much and there's not thinking at all.
Yeah.
And that was not thinking at all. And that was emblematic of how this team gets
Well, I also think they conflated two issues. I think they conflated the entertainment nonsense, which I always thought was a complete to be frank. Just shut up. Just shut up. The entertainment is you playing cricket for us for 5 days. I'm enjoying playing cricket. Crack on.
And people find it entertaining when you win series.
Exactly.
You know?
They didn't need to major on that, but I have never found fault with the approach, the fundamental up top approach of Bazball. That you know what, we are not going to judge you for the mistakes you make. We're going to judge you on the intent you make them with.
I think what we're getting to here is there's carefree and there's careless. And I think the two things often can be conflated in this. The carefree thing you're referring to there, Miller, where they're trying to get into a state of zen of sorts. They're trying to be at peace with the and that's actually quite healthy, because cricket is a sport of failure. And if you're at peace with failure, you're more likely to be able to reconcile how challenging the sport is and so on. But when that dips into careless, and when the consequences aren't being reconciled, as Geoff says, about principally about the way in which they've lost some howlers through the course of the last 4 years, as well as some miracle wins. That is, I think, the major challenge for England. How do they adjust what they've done so far? How do they perfect Bazball? How do they get it absolutely bang on for what is the toughest away tour there is for England teams? Well, akin to India, I suppose, or equal with India, but certainly psychologically the toughest trip is the one you make to Australia, because you're judged against it for the rest of your life if you're an England cricketer. So how can they refine it, nail it, and make sure that they leave there feeling like they're giving themselves every chance, rather than slipping into the narrative of, if we get done this week, we'll just go harder next week, and those glib comments that we often hear when they lose, and implying that it doesn't matter so long as they don't quite go this far anymore. But the early days of Bazball, when they would lose, they say, well, were you not entertained in that kind of
for the good of the game?
For the good of the game.
The one thing I will say,
we're beyond that now.
The one thing I will say in the defence of the mistakes they made at the start of the 23 series, particularly the declaration.
I didn't mind the declaration.
I didn't mind the declaration either. If they'd taken an early wicket that night,
it would have
justified it.
Yeah.
And they might have made 0 more runs anyway.
Exactly.
And who knows?
I didn't mind the declaration, but the hindsight of the declaration just looked like hubris. But the point I suppose is just how do they channel the knowledge that they've brought by playing that way? It's almost like the madman theory of global politics. Is like, I'm willing to press that button. I'm willing to press that button because I've pressed that button. Can they adapt
Could you
that
possibly be referring to?
I can't imagine. But having done that once, Australia will know that England are capable of doing mad things and not worrying about being mad about it. So that strikes me as something that they can take into this series that is different to everything they've ever gone into Ashes Down Under with.
Yeah, be unpredictable. And that's why we're more interested in this than in previous series, because there is that unpredictability.
Indeed, yeah. Stokes, it doesn't do draws. They do moral victories, of course. It'd be interesting to see if they, let's say, very optimistic prediction of 2-1 up going into the final day of the final test, where the blocking out for a draw might look more favourable.
Yeah, how's Jamie Smith playing there?
What was there? There's been one instance where they've had the chance to bat for a draw. It was against India during the summer, and they did not show that they have that club in the bag.
They don't.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge
that's the one that I'm talking about. I think
that is an emblem of where, and oftentimes to draw a test match is an enormous step in the right direction of winning a series.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
So that's going to be really challenging.
They don't have that club though, which is the entire reason they went down this route in the first place. They lent into their white ball success that they demonstrated over the preceding 10 years.
Right.
A World Cup winning 10-year run that got them to a point where, you know what, we're quite good at just hitting the ball hard. Let's do more of that rather than die in a hole. I mean, I can't fault that. I remember writing about the Melbourne Test when Scott Boland got his 6 for 7, and Hasib Hamid, classic example. I think he got about 12 runs across the two innings from about 50 balls. I don't know. He could not have played better. For the role he was expected to play in that iteration of England. He was defending for his life, he was getting in line, doing everything right, and then got a ball with his name on it and couldn't do anything about it. It's like, you can't do that. Zach Crawley was dying in a hole in that iteration of England. We've been there, done that. England are not going to die in a hole in this series, and that is the one thing that's gives me hope that they can win it, because the worst thing
at least if they lose it, they'll lose it quickly.
That would help too. But
you're not going to have to stay up for 5 nights in a row.
And also gives them a chance to rest their fast bowlers if they lose quickly. So they come back harder and hit them harder next time.
Well, alternatively, actually bat more than 60 overs. That might help rest your fast bowlers too.
Also true.
It's going to be fun watching, and hopefully 3-day tests. Australia, I think it's fair to say, probably have the more interesting selection issues. They have announced a squad. Geoff, is Jake Weatherald going to debut, or is Marnus Labuschagne going to open? Because we don't know. Greg Chappell wrote a column for us over the weekend, and he's very much viewing this as Australia going with Labuschagne opening and
Interesting.
And Green at 3 and a sort of conservative. And some of this hinges on Cameron Green's ability to bowl. I think he bowled 8 overs
I think Greg Chappell might be a bit cross that Mitch Marsh isn't opening, because his previous column was arguing stridently for that. Sorry, Geoff.
Greg, look, maybe Greg's more linked in than we are. I'm not sure. It seems very self-evident to me that as long as Green's fit to bowl, he will bat 6, Labuschagne will bat 3, Weatherald will open. I don't think they would have picked Weatherald in the squad if Plan A wasn't to have him open. That just doesn't make sense that he would be there at all. They would have had a spare bowling option or something like that.
A spare batter.
Inglis is there as a spare bat. He's batted in various positions too. So the fact that Weatherald is there, the only place Weatherald could bat is 2. Behind Khawaja, that's it. If Labuschagne's in the squad, he's batting, so he's playing, so he'll be playing 3. And the only way that it would change is if Green pulls up sore. He bowled in the Shield game, sort of overnight our time here in England. Went well by all reports. Looks fine. They were confident that he'd be up to bowl in that game. That was the plan originally, was he would prove his bowling fitness here. He's passed that so far. If he pulls up sore, then maybe they'll shuffle it, bring Webster in at 6 as the other bowler, push Green to 3, Labuschagne to open. But Plan A is Weatherald opening, Labuschagne 3, Green 6, because they do rate Green more highly than Webster in a 1v1 basis.
And they also rate Green ahead of Weatherald. So, as Geoff's explained, it is spot on. I just add that Green was meant to start bowling last week and didn't in the 3rd Shield game, which is what this extra layer of Labuschagne opening, this is where this came in. Now that he's bowled overnight, 1 for 13 from 8. All they want is 15 overs out of him, right? They're not asking him to, and that's all I wanted him in the series too, by the way. They want about 15 overs a test match to provide some support to the big 3 quicks, whoever they end up being at any given moment. Bowled well, bowled sharp, moved the ball around. They loved it. If he pulls up fine and he gets through, the recovery in the usual way after a 4-day game, he will bat 6. But curiously, if he pulls up badly and his back's not great, he'll bat 3, which seems odd that he would be promoted if his back wasn't as good. But such is the way they rate him. Pat Cummins is long on the record saying that he doesn't care about batting orders and he thinks you pick your best 6 players and so on. And Green to them is clearly in their best 6 to their way of thinking. And that's where Webster would find himself weirdly in the team if Green's back's no good. So at the moment, though, first test, he bowled, tick, bowled well, tick. If he's good when he wakes up in the morning and they can take the 4 remaining wickets without him, all the better. They've only got 6 on day 1 at stumps with the ball, West Australia.
And then this will probably be an ongoing thing through the series as well. It'll be, is Green fit to bowl? They want that extra bowler in there. But again, if we're having these shorter games that we're talking about, if everything is in fast forward, maybe the fast bowling loads are low enough that it won't matter as much. He might not be needed. But I don't think
they run the risk of that.
They really want to have the backup. Well, particularly early in a series, Hazlewood has tended to go down first test when he's gone down in the last few years. So particularly getting him through that first one, getting Cummins back, being confident that Cummins will be fit. There are a fair few moving parts with the Australian quicks. And
Cummins did an interview with Channel 7 a couple of days ago. So he is, they always say this, right, ahead of schedule. He bowled 8 overs in the nets the other day. He was fine, pulled up right, didn't have any soreness. But he's already flagging that whilst he now might be available for Brisbane, it's improbable with the loads and the way they set it up with the sports scientists that he could play all 4, unless they were rapidly completed
played
test matches.
Second and maybe 2 of the last 3, but probably not 3 of the last 3.
What I was thinking was, he's a monster with the pink ball, and his record at Melbourne's incredible. So if he plays Brisbane, Melbourne, 2 of the 4 after that, or maybe 2 of the next 3, and Sydney, they maybe roll the dice if the series is live, and don't play him if the series is sorted out one way or the other. So I think that would be Australia's best case scenario, that Cummins plays 2 or 3. Which helps with that wider question about bench depth. Although
Boland in Melbourne wouldn't be a
Boland
a
at
bad
Melbourne's
shout,
not a bad shout, and nor is Brendan Doggett, I hasten to add. What a great start to the Shield season he's had, having led the Shield last year. He was in the squad for the World Test final. He is ready, if called upon, to play Test cricket. That much is almost certain.
It's all sounding very Jasprit Bumrah, isn't it? It's like,
it is.
Bumrah plays 3 out of 5, and India did all right in the matches he missed. So who knows where this ends up.
Cummins is ahead of schedule, although he's very much behind schedule. He's missing the first test. Miller, England would presumably be quite happy to face or to have Marnus opening and Green at number 3. In the sense
I'd be delighted. I mean, it still baffles me. I know the justifications and the moving parts are what they are, but it's still extraordinary to be this close to the start of an Ashes, and for Australia, of all the teams in the world, to not know their top 3. It's such an unusual scenario for I know this
top
evolution.
3. They just have 2 of them.
Yeah, but especially we've had the chat about Ollie Pope and what have you, but at least England go in with a top 3 and top 4 that is a top 5 that's locked, top 6 that's locked. I mean, it's
top
like,
7
for the first time in an eternity, England go down there with a batting unit that is more settled. You can debate the individual components, but it's a far more settled unit than Australia are going to be able to put out, regardless of how they end up laying their cards out.
And to loop back around, I mean, the Khawaja thing is he is the most established, or rather, he is the most clear on the team sheet at the top of the list. But pace bowling to Khawaja, and it's not just a Bumrah thing. It was World Test final, and it was in the Caribbean, and it was I'm thinking more Caribbean most recently.
But I mean, Siraj got him out plenty of times in that series
totally.
as well. It's high quality fast bowling. Rabada in the WTC, and then Seals.
Mark Wood at Headingley.
Mark Wood. Well, high quality fast bowling gets anyone out anyway. By the way, it's an occupational hazard as an opener. But it's just that Khawaja has now hit the point of his career where that is a statistical category where it's an enduring issue. So. Yeah, this is low key. No one's really talking about it. But if he didn't do well in the first couple of Test matches, he may not get that sort of farewell lap that he would crave and relish this year. And finishing on his old home ground at the SCG would be a beautiful thing if Australia retain the Ashes. If they don't, and it could end abruptly. I'm just foreshadowing that. I hope it doesn't, because I hope it was when Khawaja gets the end to the career that everybody wants. But not a lot of people.
He's got to earn that. You can't.
He's got to earn it.
You can't ride
That's right.
5 lean tests or 4 lean tests to that point. It's not going to happen because he's looked so vulnerable against proper quick bowling, and because he keeps getting out in the same way, in the air, like no control, poking at balls outside off stump. He's either edging to sleep or getting beaten on the inside edge, and it's happening in both directions. People are pointing to, he made his highest career score a few months ago. Yeah, he did in Sri Lanka, and he wasn't facing much in the way of quick stuff. No. And aside from that, hasn't made 102.5 years. So there's a lot of faith being put in him, which those returns don't necessarily back up.
He's going to be the oldest Australian opener since Lindsay Hassett, I think.
Oh, I like that. It's a good one.
54 or something.
Wonder if he gets a tattoo of Lindsay Hassett's face on his.
I might. What a man!
Big one on the chest.
Yeah, all right. Cool. Who else we getting tats off?
Get Warwick Armstrong on the back. Hassett on the chest.
Just on Weatherald, who I heard he
Might
gave
get a tattoo of Weatherald if he goes well.
well, he gave a fun interview to the great cricketer.
Very good, yes.
A little bit of banter there with Uzzy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an experienced player, but it's quite a thing to come in and debut in an Ashes series as well.
Yeah, I just sort of
It's
feel
no
like
easy task.
if you're going to do it, if you're going to do that debut at an Ashes thing, you're picking a 31-year-old who's in great nick.
Well, Cameron
who's a
Bancroft did it,
journeyman.
and it worked out well for him. So.
Cameron Bancroft was 23 or something. I guess my point is he is a journeyman. He's played for a couple of states. He's lived in multiple states. He's an unusual cricketer in that sense. He's not necessarily straight the way through on the pathway. I'm not saying he's had to do it the hard way necessarily, but he's had challenges along the way. He's obviously a really that interview with the great cricketer was instructive because he's a pretty intelligent, funny dude, right? He feels to me like the kind of character that, you know, some people aren't well suited to being thrown into the frying pan of an Ashes series against Archer, Wood, etc. My instinct is that he probably has got the right character to be okay with those circumstances, and the fact that he has. This is important. Australia A was really nothing for a number of years, and the pandemic played a role in that. Australia A is meant to be the place where you go before you reach the Test team, and he got 100 there against Sri Lanka
Huge
recently.
100 as well.
Yeah.
And I think the thing with Weatherald is, you know, I've been watching him with some interest for quite a few years now, because at least domestically he's a big occasion player. There's a Big Bash final some years ago that I'm thinking of. There's pointy end of Shield seasons when it's really mattered. And when he was playing for South Australia before he was playing for Tassie, and South Australia was struggling, they were really battling, and there were points where he would be a player to stand up at an important time. So having seen that at the level down gives me some reason to believe that when he's given this next job, it may not overwhelm him, you know, and perhaps it helps. Starting at Perth, you don't have all the weight of history, you know, the Brisbane thing where they've been since the 1930s, starting every series, or you know, coming out like Brad Hodge on Boxing Day and absolutely losing it because it was just too big an occasion. Being able to start at Perth, it might not be as intense, although if they fill that joint, they get 50, 60,000 in.
Which they should for the first time outside of
technically a
parochial.
sellout, but we know that sellouts don't necessarily mean much.
I have to say though, I'm with Greg Chappell. I'd have gone for Ashes legend Mitch Marsh for this Test.
Yeah.
Just throw him in there. I mean,
What's the worst can happen?
England would really not like to see him playing again.
True.
He has a very, very good record against them.
Top and at Perth as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He likes making runs.
And he likes facing fast
bowling.
He's
Exactly
got
that.
all the CricViz data points to that, doesn't it? He did well against Mark Wood on that remarkable
He
day
did.
when Wood was hitting 100 mile an hour near enough.
Yeah,
at
just
Leeds a
pinging
couple of
him
years
over
back.
mid-wicket.
I enjoyed the stat the other day that he had the highest runs per balls faced that they'd been able to calculate in whatever period of history.
And if he has had 6 pints, you know, at the start of the Perth Test,
Even better.
somehow then
I reckon
it was
get him in the dressing room.
runs per scoring shot. Yeah,
Right.
the highest average of
yeah.
runs per scoring shot.
What I'd love to see is Mitch Marsh after
Yeah.
6 pints to go, you know what, Mitch is the best bloke in cricket. Let's get him in the viewing room and hang out with us after the 6 pints by lunch. You know,
I want to see it Luke Palmer's back style, 31 minutes before play. There's like a 5-car pile up in the warm-up. A bunch of players are injured. They're like, out you come.
Mitch.
He's already in the hospitality suite holding 2 bottles of Prosecco. And they're like, come down and warm up, get the clobber on. You're going out to face Mark Wood.
That'd get him in the story time. The next
big time.
edition.
He'd be on the cover.
You mentioned the Dad's Army thing, Colo. Only one player under 30 in Cam Green, but I guess the operative thing from Australia's point of view is that these are all the best players and they're all still working.
Yeah, feature not a flaw. I think they still see it as. Although in saying that, every team needs to transition at the right time. They've formed the view that the right time isn't when they're facing this particular English team. Cool. I don't think that's wild. Had they gone and said, right, we're going to pick Cam Kellaway and Sam Constant to open the batting, people would be going, what on earth are you doing that for? Why are you picking a couple of kids for? Yeah. Precociously talented as they are. There's time for that. Yep. There are the right times to blood cricketers, and Australia historically are pretty good at that. They don't often, though, do it at the start of an Ashes series where England, for all the reasons you stated, Miller, are a threat. This isn't the England team of previous visits to Australia. They might get resold anyway if things don't go well at the start, but at least on paper, are more of a threat than others who've rocked up. So they're going to dance with the one that brung them. The teams that have brought them enormous success, led in the middle order by Smith, who's back to being a ton machine, Travis Head, who is the definition of a big game player. You look at the way that he made back-to-back hundreds in the Border Gavaskar when they were in real strife last year, World Cup final, World Test Championship final. That's Travis Head's thing. and Alex Carey in great nick. They'll be pretty relaxed about the group they've got at the moment. Not to mention the bowlers with more than 1,200 wickets in tandem together when you throw.
Well, Hazelwood's the only one who doesn't have 300, and he's on 295.
Yeah.
So
and Boland takes his wickets at the same average, a tenth of a run away from SF Barnes.
Yeah.
So pretty good.
Anything I've got a couple of prior examples of teams. First the 2006-7 Ashes team. That was an ancient team, Australian team, but it came into that series with a real point to prove. So having lost in 2005, this was their last dance. Absolutely going gung ho for revenge, and got it. I just don't quite feel that this team has got that same incentive, same incentive. They've already lost the World Test Championship final. They're a little bit miffed. They're
irritable about 2023.
Exactly.
They were definitely irritated by a lot of things that happened in that series, but not furious.
It's not furious, exactly that.
I'm just not sure who you're dropping though. Like, I think in practical terms, like you're probably right about the Dad's Army critique is you should have more guys with a two in front of the age, right? I'm not sure line by line which Australian cricketer, other than possibly Khawaja, which I think is a reasonable debate, could have been transitioned out. I don't think any of them can.
I'll give you another example of a team that did not see it coming was England in 2013-14. That was another old team that thought it was on its way to winning 4 Ashes in 5 and then lose 5-0 because it did not know that all of a sudden you guys are just too old. You guys have fallen off a cliff and you can't get back up.
It could happen. But I think a couple of things here. You're like, Usman Khawaja's 38, going to turn 39, isn't he, during the series? Not everybody else is. Like, you've got a lot of 31s, 32s, 33s. Cricketers are generally at their peak at those ages these days. They play later. They play better later. They've got much better sports and conditioning, nutrition. They're getting paid a couple of $1 million a year. They have a lot of incentives to stay fit and be better in a way that they didn't in earlier eras. So there's that part of it going on. And then you've got quite a lot of players who are not hugely experienced. Like someone like Alex Carey's had a decent career, but it's not a massively long career. They're not players necessarily, Travis Head even, who are at the end of like having been there for so long that they're worn out and jaded by it. There's still a freshness to like a bunch of these players played in the last Ashes in Australia, but not previously, not before that. The bowling group, yes, they're going back to 2017-18, those main 4, leaving out Boland, but you've got players, and Green's an example where England fans don't get Green. They think he's no good because they haven't seen him do anything particularly notable. But the bits that we've seen when he has done that have shown the kind of ceiling that he's got. So maybe this is the series where he's able to really show what he can do. So there are still players with points to prove in that Australian squad, and there are players who are not worn out. Yeah, Boland's old, but he's ravenous. He's played 14 Test matches. He should have played 114. At the way things are going now, he will want to. Every single ball that he bowls, he's going to care about in this series. So I think there's a bit more to it than that. We're at the end of the road sort of interpretation.